Without saying, particularly to a congregation like this, including persons online, that the job of parenting is ideally for adults who have been prepared for the job. But if many of us would be honest with ourselves, apart from observing how other people parented, not many people feel ready to be parents by the time they're being called to be parents for the first time. And last week, right at the end of our discussion, one person spoke up and said that she was asked to be a parent before she became an adult, and she hated it. But I know this lady. I've spoken with her many times, and I know that over the years she has been able to help many children in her life after she became an adult. She became a school teacher, a high school principal, and I think she was a very successful high school principal, and someone who has been a parent of her own children and children who were not her own. I mentioned that last part because we want to move into the discussion of parenting children who are not our own biologically. We didn't born them, we didn't birth them, but they have come into our lives, and we need to be ready to be parents of those children as well. So, I want to welcome Professor Duncan to our panel today, especially because we're going to be talking for much of the time about parenting children who are not our own. I want to bring Dr. Dawkins and Mrs. Bain back for a start, and then I'm giving Dr. Dawkins a little time to take a few deep breaths before I pose questions to him. Last time we mentioned something but didn't have time to deal with it. It's something that's known now by a shorthand phrase, ACEs, Adverse Children's Experiences, Adverse Childhood Experiences. I would like both Mrs. Bain and Dr. Dawkins to tell us a little bit about that so that the congregation is in touch with what we are dealing with. Who will speak first?
All right. Good morning, everyone. Adverse childhood experiences came about after a survey done by Kaiser Permanente. And I found out about it because there was a Jamaican doctor who worked in California. When she discovered what adverse childhood experiences were, she decided to use the information in her own clinic. Adverse childhood experiences refers to violence, abuse, or neglect, if somebody witnesses it, if a child witnesses it, violence in the home or the community. It involves a family member who may have attempted or committed suicide, completed suicide. If children grow up in a household or a yard with persons who use or abuse substances, persons who have mental health problems, instability due to parental separation, instability due to household members being in jail or prison. Any of those, there are 10 of them. If the child grows up in situations and there are more than 3 of these situations, the likelihood of that child having difficulty during childhood and as an adult, because it is generational. I have met parents who bring their children with situations, And when I interview them, the parents have had the same situations and the grandparents have had the same situations. Now, you are not condemned if you have 3 or more of these situations, because if you can get counseling, if you can get people who care for you, love you, see you, and help you, you are not condemned. And of course, we know that the Lord Jesus, when we trust him, he can make us to become new creatures, and we can be different. But the whole point is to be aware of these situations that can cause or lead to problems in later life.
Dr. Dawkins, would you like to add anything to what Mrs. Bain has said?
Just a little bit more. They have also found out that the ACEs continue into adult life and affect your general health, heart conditions, mental health conditions. Of course, if you didn't get an opportunity to have a good education, it affects your job prospects. And as Mrs. Bain was saying about it becoming generational, and this is something we know very well, where mother, grandmother, children, grandchildren live in similar circumstances, similar single-family homes, and all the complications were very common in our country.
Thank you. You know, last week I identified other persons who could be on this panel. We have other persons who are pediatricians who we are blessed to have them as part of our congregation. I mentioned Dr. Mara Hosang and Dr. Kay Bailey. There was someone else that I was hoping would be on the panel from last week, but she wasn't able to come last week. I see her in the congregation, and I want to recognize Mrs. Elspeth Madden. Because like Mrs. Bain, Mrs. Madden has had the kind of training that would allow her to share experiences that will strengthen other parents. So thank you, Elspeth, but I just wanted to recognize you. Okay. Now, to take us into the topic for today. If a person doesn't have children of their own, in what ways can that person be involved in helping children? And this is for any of the 3 persons on the panel. So Dr. Duncan, you can come in at this point, and the other 2 persons can add.
So, can you hear me? Right. Let me first say that it's an honor.
Is your mic on?
It's an honor to be here, representing Family Life Ministries, and Dr. Davidson, Karen Fraser-Williams is here with me as well. My wife is sitting quite quietly there, and it's really a special honor to be here. And as to how people become parents, parents who are not biological parents, that is a responsibility that some people have thrust upon them, or responsibility that some people seek out of goodwill and out of interest of affecting a child or a generation of children. And it is a special situation where a child may have a problem, for example, with their biological parents, or for parents have a problem with the law, or parents have died, and they fall upon a difficult situation, and sometimes the state is involved, and then they get start fostering these children because the state asks them to take over the care of these children, or they volunteer and then they are placed with these children. So that's one way. And there are other ways too, where, for example, children who are in families who parents have to go away to the United States, all over the place, and they leave the children behind, and then an aunt or some other relative takes over that responsibility. So sometimes they call those quite, not necessarily accurately, but they call them barrel children, because the parents send things out in a barrel and that's how they survive, for example. And you have other situations, like, because I was in that sort of situation where you have certain families where certain members have particular skills. For example, in my situation, I had 2 aunts who were particularly good teachers. And my father had 6 children, and he had brothers as well who had a number of other children. And these children, parents, my aunts were particularly skilled at teaching. And about 80% of our families rotated through these aunts in the country. And they were head teachers, or their husbands were head teachers in the country. And I totally spent maybe about 4 to 5 years at one time up to common entrance, and my other siblings or cousins spent similar time with them. And this can be beneficial, although they're not your biological parents, but it may not seem to you as something that is ideal, and it's not ideal emotionally, I would think, in most circumstances, but in my own circumstances, educationally, it was certainly a great advantage for me, and also for my cousins as well. So it can prove to be quite advantageous when you have situations when parents step up to the platter and take on that responsibility. Sometimes it doesn't work out good. For example, if a child is being sent in a situation where that child is going to be called upon to do primarily domestic things, and you have that situation too, where someone doesn't have children who they don't want to do the housework, so they bring in a child to do primarily housework, or old people who cannot do things, and they bring in children to do the menial stuff without thinking of the children's future. So I think that's a fair idea of the spectrum. As far as Family Life Ministries goes now, we have a father-child program, which is a foster care program, which is a formal private foster care program, which parents are enlisted within this program, where we go out to churches and we invite persons who want to become foster parents, and Karen is here, who usually does a lot of groundwork, and so we go to churches, so really enlist Christian families or to enlist within the program and offer themselves to become foster parents. And then we work in conjunction with the CPFSA, where a number of children are in that organization who for some one reason or another are under the care of the state, and somehow we view it as an essential part of our program to affect the next generation of children by offering them the advantages of a Christian family, for them to grow up in that family, and us to influence this generation and a generation to come. Because there is no greater honor than to shape the minds and form the habits of our young. And that is a very important role that we can do.
Thank you very much. And before we go further, I did not recognize your wife, so I didn't welcome her. And I would like us to welcome Mrs. Duncan. Would you Raise your hand. And I apologize. Okay. So you mentioned an acronym, CPFSA, and I know that that stands for the Child Protection and Family Services Agency. I had to look it up, and I had to try to memorize it. You notice that I'm looking down at my paper because I find it a little hard to memorize that long name. But my question to you is, how did Family Life Ministries get involved, and why did Family Life Ministries decide to get involved in foster care? Could you tell us a little bit about that history?
Yes, well, in any situation where you have movements or you have major developments taking place that seem to be organic, at the background, very often there are moving spirits or persons who are motivators in the background that drive these things. They don't happen by accident. And I'll mention first Dr. Davidson, who is in the business of attending to the psychological needs of everyone that comes his way. And he was exposed to a particular research, which I think was done by Professor Freddie Hickling, which indicated that a number of children who, on reaching 18 in governmental home care situations, when they age out of these these situations, some of them really have a very dubious future ahead of them. And having seen that, he was moved for that reason to see what can be done. And then we had Mr. Arnold Aiken, who was very our past board member, and who works along with Dr. Aiken, who worked along with Dr. Davidson. And his wife is brother to Philip Bruce, who runs a foster care program in the United States in Canada called Nairn Family Homes. And so it's these two, you just have a fertilization of an idea and you have a prospect. You don't have to remake the wheel. And so this was, it was interesting that Family Life Ministries pounced upon the idea of really getting into foster care because of the need being so great. And so Nairn Family Homes, Family Life Ministries, and the way to really have children enlisted is through the CPFSA. So there is through a lot of negotiation and a lot of discussion, that's how we have these three coming together, and how the For the Child foster care program was formed.
So would you describe it as a partnership between CPFSA and Family Life Ministries?
It's a partnership between CPFSA, Family Life Ministries, yes.
I want to ask Mrs. Bain or Dr. Dawkins, from your experience, what is the ideal age when a program like this can be started and be successful? How old or how young should the child be? Dr. Dawkins?
I don't know if you'll allow me to give a personal story.
Certainly.
Okay. So I see you have your child shifting, but I won't call it that. I'll call it common law adoption. So I grew up in rural St. Mary, parents and 4 biological kids. And a very good friend of my mother's wanted to do a job in the Bahamas. But at the time, she had a 3-year-old boy, and the job didn't allow her to take her child with her. So my mother, both the ladies got together and organized for the 3-year-old to come into our home. And one morning, I saw this little fellow appear in the house, crying for his mother day and night. And nothing was said to us 4 kids. And we wondered what was going on. Well, what happened is eventually we had a little family discussion, and we were told that mommy is working in the Bahamas, and we have space and love and care, can share, so we'll look after this little one till mommy comes back. Well, even with that explanation, I didn't like it. As he got more familiar with us, started breaking my toys, soiling my bed, started getting between me and my mommy, started looking to me as his older brother, none of which I liked. But eventually, I got to like him because about a year later, mommy visited from the Bahamas with a whole lot of stuff from Walmart and Sears and maybe Target, and that really helped me to love this little boy.
I think that personal stories are powerful, and tell us things that we wouldn't retain if we were just taught like how sometimes teachers teach A, B, C. Mrs. Bain, I don't know if you have a personal story, but in terms of the question of how young or how old would be ideal, what is your experience? What would you like to share?
The earlier, the better, I think. So some foster parents get the children when they're months old, and it's better to help the child at that early age than to wait until they're 5 or 8. But we can help whatever age the child is, because I really believe that God helps us in situations like these. So the earlier the better, and I know some foster parents have had the children by the time they're about 1, and there's the situation where pediatricians are talking about the first 1,000 days of the child's life, which are very formative days. So the earlier the better, I would say.
Mm-hmm. In Dr. Dawkins' story, the question came to me about who gets preparation. And as I was thinking about it, Dr. Duncan, I was just thinking the child and the foster parent. But it depends on who else is in the home. So preparation, it would seem to me, has to happen in many directions. Is that true?
Yes. I think it is important to appreciate that whenever one is embarking on such an important new development in a home situation, it is best if it doesn't start off how Lessep circumstances start off. You just saw someone just turn up to the home. It's important that, the parents be investigated thoroughly, see that there are not any background underlying detrimental factors to the new child that they're going to be taking care of. It's also important that the home situation be investigated, other children, what are the antagonistic relationships that may be lurking in the background if you put a child there. And sometimes it is not good to bring a new child in and drop them into the same bedroom of another child. It is better to, if in a new situation, to let them have their own space for a while before they work themselves into the family. Also, you need to investigate the parental situation, that if there are any pecuniary benefits that can arise from fostering, for example, whatever allowances, that this is not the motivation for foster care, that there are financial resources available to provide whatever needs a child may have. And then I think generally it's good if you have some sort of personality evaluation, which is something that has a scientific basis, that you can assess what sort of people you're putting the child with, so you can so you can have an evaluation. And certainly Family Life Ministries and CPFSA does that through the social worker and also through the psychologist.
There's a lot that I'm hearing in what you have said, and I'm just wondering, persons who are professing Christians, we say that we have love, because we have been blessed with coming to Christ, and we want to do things out of love. Is that enough to prepare a person to be an effective foster parent? Christian love.
I think it's very important to appreciate that love is important, Christian love is important, but love is important. An appreciation of the work and the work and the value of Christian upbringing is important, but you have to appreciate that when one is taking on this responsibility, some educational work needs to be done in order to be certain or to be more sure that what is going to be taking place is something that is appreciated generally to be acceptable. So anyone who is undertaking foster care, we have an ongoing parental educational program taking place at the same time, and we have that like once every month, and various persons do it. Dr. Bruce comes down and does it sometimes, and others do it along with the parents. And it's also important that because some parents will not naturally understand the various challenges that are involved in taking care of a foster child. Some of these children come to their families with psychological stress, anxiety issues, traumatized in various ways. And if you are not mentally prepared to understand that you are there to provide support and to provide love, somehow to get some attachment going, because when the attachment is attained, then the child will get confidence, and when the confidence comes, the child will be able to navigate the world better. Unless you appreciate that this attachment is not biological attachment, so it will not come naturally. You have to see it as something you work towards as a foster parent. If you understand these issues, you'll be able to carry out that function better.
Okay, and a question that comes out of what you said, is fostering and adoption the same thing, or are they different?
Yeah, well, fostering is perceived and is usually assessed as a temporary situation where you have temporary care of a child, and adoption is a permanent, full responsibility being handed over to you for the child future. Fostering sometimes grows into adoption sometimes, and sometimes that is helpful to the child and so on. But at the commencement, fostering is not necessarily perceived or evaluated as a necessary progression to adoption.
So these children who come into the For the Child, that's the name of the program that you have chosen, come into that program at Family Life Ministries, there's an end point, there's an age at which where do they go at that end point? How old are they when fostering is finished?
Well, the fostering situation in the legal sense would naturally arrive when the child is 18 years old. But that does not mean that if you're a foster parent who has a child at age 18 and you are attached to that child and that child is attached to you and you have an emotional bond going, you don't have to have a physical break in your association with that child. But in other situations, there are more formal situations where as children get older, they have to transition between age 18 and to 21, where they are now in a transitional stage where you are preparing them to independent living, and the state will be involved in that, in that situation. But not all children become fostered, so you have to have that sort of program in place as well.
I want to ask Mrs. Bain, because I know that in your counseling program where you focus on counseling children mainly, but you are interacting with their parents, what kind of preparation does your counseling role serve? How does that help both the child and the parent? What kinds of issues do you find?
When I think of the children who have come to me who are being fostered, and I think of their parents, some parents, even though there is preparation which is done, when they actually have the child, things are different and they didn't anticipate that things would be so different. And so sometimes the parents are very surprised at the child's behavior. They're very surprised that that's what parenting requires. And so when children come to me and the parents come, we talk it through, and I encourage the parents because it takes time to bond. And sometimes the child acts up to see, do you really want me? So the child behaves badly to see if the parent is going to send them back. And sometimes some of these children have been sent back more than once. They have gone into a home, the family just couldn't manage, send them back to the state home. They've gone into another home. And so they are not sure. And they act up. When they are sure, they begin to thrive. They begin to latch on to this person as mommy or daddy. The other thing is that a number of the parents are single women who have never had their own children, so they have no idea what it means to have a child 24/7 in their household. And so they have to learn. And it helps. The preparation, the monthly meetings, the training helps them to get on with the job. And I have seen a number of them have blossomed, and the children are doing well because they stuck to it and learned how to manage and love those children.
Now, one of the reasons why each of you were selected to be on this panel is because part of your personal story is that you are parents yourself. And last week, Dr. Dawkins told me, and I wasn't aware, that he is also a grandfather. If you were like you didn't have a lot of book learning to be parents. How did your Christian profession, your Christian experience, help to prepare you for your personal parenting role? And I'm going to start at my immediate right, and we'll go across. Dr. Dawkins. Yeah. What helped to prepare you, and was your Christian faith any part of that? And I don't want that to be a leading question. I just want you to tell us honestly, like you told us the story of the 3-year-old that came into your house.
Right. Now, reflecting on how things evolved, can you use that word in church? You picked up a lot of cues that you didn't even know you were picking up. So as I said last time, when I had kids, I began doing a lot of what I saw my parents doing. And that experience, of course, is the full experience of being in church nearly every Sunday. Did I say church and Sunday school? Nearly every Sunday. God was a central part of, my father was an elder. My mother was very active in our church. So a lot of what went on in our home, except for the few times when I got beaten, a lot of what went on in our home was what you would have expected a Christian family to do. And I didn't know I was learning Christian ways until when I needed to put these things into practice. And I realized that most of my decisions have been flavored, have been decided by what I learned in church, Bible class, even at school, what I saw my parents do. And the other thing you learn is, I think you said, Prof, the kids are all individual persons. So it's not this blanket approach to all of them. And I think it's just very important to treat them as individuals.
Thank you, Dr. Duncan.
Yes, I think, well, it's a given. Growing up in a Christian home, going to church, Sunday school was a given. And the more of it you are exposed to, the more you understand that that's when these things, the things that are routine in your formative years become inculcated. So church attendance and so on are important parts. But I think as a parent, there are certain things I wanted my children to appreciate, which are a little deeper. The first being that I understand, and I know that a lot of children start off in church, and sometimes they later on they deviate, and other times they come back. The only time they come back is if they see authenticity in the home. So you have to make sure that whatever you talk, you do the walk. And in the home situation as children, that is it. You have to always constantly evaluate yourself that what you're calling upon them. Some parents send the children to church with the mother and the father gone out, or mother and father gone out and send them with a neighbor or something. That will not work in that situation. So you have to do the authentic background information. The other thing is, I think, and the prayer life is an important thing that you grow into as you get older, and it has to be a central pillar of your life. And I think if you can get your child to understand the value of a personal relationship with God, irrespective of how dutiful they are going to church every Sunday or whatever, if you can get them to appreciate that very early and going through life, you have done a tremendous job for that child. And I think that the whole idea of somehow emphasizing that if you have a challenge, you pray about it and you pray about it with them, and when they see it works out and you point out how these things happen, it sticks with them. And when they start going through their difficult times, the worst things you can do is to have a child out there facing the world by themselves and not realize that Jesus is right there, and that they can hand over these problems too, because the problems become bigger and bigger as they get older. And the most important message or the most important lesson you can teach them is to realize that they don't have to go through life alone. That is the most important message you can tell them.
Thank you. Mrs. Bain?
Okay. I didn't grow up in a Christian home, but I went to church at Sunday school because my mother sent us. And my mother accepted the Lord a few years after we were married, because she had a near-death experience on the Junction Road where the vehicle almost went over the precipice. And that jolted her. Of course, she had gone to church when she was young, but that jolted her, and she committed her life to the Lord. And then she was the most wonderful person I've ever met. Before, she was harsh. She was angry and upset about life because life was hard. But once she accepted the Lord, it was different. So when I got married, I decided neither will my mother or Brendan's mother look after my children. I am going to parent them according to how the Lord wanted me to. And so that's what I tried to do with the children, to parent them based on biblical principles. And God has been good to us.
Thank you. Now, I'm conscious of time. I think that we've covered quite a bit of ground. I trust that persons have benefited both last week and this week. And I wonder what interested persons can do, and I'm thinking about persons who have logged in online as well, how they can contact Family Life Ministries for more detailed information about this foster parent program. Persons don't have to think about becoming foster parents yourself necessarily, although maybe some persons may be thinking about that, and you might want some more details. But I happen to know from talking with Professor Duncan that there is some amount of funding that is given to supplement persons through this For the Child program. Am I correct? That
Yes.
can help the persons who are undertaking the responsibility to be foster parents.
Yes, there is the CPFSA or the government has a certain amount that these foster parents receive, and we top it up as well. Parents that come through for the child program, and but it is something that you have to appreciate, that raising a child involves a lot, and that sometimes is a small portion of what the children require, because a number of children have to go to speech therapists, a number of them have to go through other expensive supportive psychological support, etc. And we provide psychological support as well. And we also try, and a number of the children are going to private schools, for example, because if you have certain behavioral problems, sometimes if you're autistic or you have other attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or whatever, sometimes they have to go to special institutions, and we try and get scholarships for these children as much as funding is available. And in our program now, we have about 20 of our 34 children who have scholarships because we recognize the need, and it's not something we promise, but we actively seek out to support the children.
Thank you. Brother Dan, sorry.
Can I? Professor Duncan doesn't want to say it, but many of the children are doing well at school and have been successful in CSEC. Not so? Yes, they have stayed with their foster parents and they are doing well. They are learning, they are improving. And as Professor Duncan said, if they need psychological assessment, which is very expensive, the Lord provides. So one way you can help is to also help to pay some of the fees for some of these children.
Thank you. Brother Dan, I can't see what's on the screen. That scripture verse that we asked to be shown, Just give me a signal when it's up. Okay. Perhaps persons who can see it, you can read it together. It's James chapter 1, verse 27. Let's read it together, persons who can see it.
Religion as it is expressed in outward acts, that is pure and unblemished in the sight of God the Father, is this: to visit and help care for the orphans and widows in their affliction and need, and to keep oneself unspotted and uncontaminated from the world.
Thank you. And I thought this was a good way for us to bring this 2 programs on child care in Child's Month, and persons know how they can contact Family Life Ministries. I don't know the phone numbers by heart. Can somebody help me?
I don't have them by heart, but Family Life Ministries is in the directory. It's where
876-920-1034 is one number.
And the 4107704 works for FLM as well? Pardon?
That's foster care.
For the foster care program. 876-410-7704 or 876-469-4608. Now, I know that this program, the service has been captured on YouTube so that we can go to YouTube and learn more about the foster care program, okay? I'm going to hand back over to our chair and thank our panelists. So we will step down and our chair, Josiah, will step up.
Thank you for such... No, man, keep clapping them and say, come down, man. They were quite informative and pleasant. Thank you so much. I don't think that there is much for me to add.